All right, Eddie. Yeah, I really love this score. I remember that you were uh, not too happy about it, and you had wanted possibly to redo it or to send it in again, or make some changes. And I guess you talked yourself out of it or something like that. And I'm glad because I feel like there's a lot to talk about in this. First of all, just to say from the very beginning, nobody is in any obligation to sound absolutely perfect or to be 10 years ahead of themselves in their craft, right? I am always learning, and I'm actually learning things from these orchestration challenges all the time. That's making me a better orchestrator. I am not saying that I am perfect, and I'm not even saying that my advice to everybody is always right. That some people might have something better to say or something more apt, more constructive to say to somebody than I will, and that's why I'm encouraging people to comment below these videos. So yeah, so interpreting, sort of thinking about like what the overall strengths and some of the things that you're dealing with. I remember at the beginning of this challenge, after the selection was announced and people were starting to work on their pieces, and I had also had a masterclass on Falla's music and so on. You had a lot of really great things to say about Spanish music and the dance forms and everything else, and that really resonated with me a lot. I used to play classes for this amazing dance teacher, Clifford Jones, and I know that sounds like a very, it sounds like a very Anglo-American kind of name or very English-sounding name, Clifford Jones. But if you were to meet him, you would think that you know, he had spent a lot of his life in Spain. I think he had a Spanish mother, and he was so, he had been so inured in that culture that that he just knew the language of the music and the dance and everything else. And wow, just spending half an hour even watching his classes, I just felt that I understood so much more about music from Spain by great Spanish composers and music that affected the Spanish style, such as we sort of see in Ravel. Who was actually a fairly intelligent imitator. Like he knew. It's obvious from listening to Ravel that he knew the dance forms. He knew, he'd actually seen people dance some of the dances that he would sort of exalt in his music. So what an education that was. And then to have Eddy come in and comment and resonate with all of those things that I remember Cliff talking about. It just, it really, really, I really felt that you added a lot to the conversation, Eddy, and it just really helped to kind of realize things more for me and bring me back to home in the music. Right. So for that, I really, really appreciate it. And I would say in the light of, of your inspiration, of your influences and information about that Spanish music style and Spanish dance style, I would say that probably you are at your strongest in this scoring when you are keeping true to that vision, the impulsiveness, the energy, the propulsion, right? The momentum of that music that just, one phrase pushes the next and pushes the next. And it's just the most exciting thing to, I'm not a dancer. I don't have the guts to go out there, Um, and, but I understand what is making people's feet move, right? So I would say that, like, when you are truest to that, then I think the music is at its strongest, right? And I think when you slow down the momentum, then that's where you run into the most problems. Now, I'm probably going to be picking apart a lot of what is going on here in terms of balance of dynamics, balance of elements, right? But the overall critique, I think, is that you just really have a lot going on, and it's a lot going on. Most of the things that you have going on really help the music, but sometimes it gets. I think you get a little carried away with some of the elements, right? And so there you end up with certain things that are not exactly kosher. Or I mean, like for instance, this if this were like a glissando, it would sort of work, but it still wouldn't be all that strong in the music. I mean, I see what you're doing here. The sounding way above, but I mean, I think it would be better just to have these as fingered pitches, right? Just to rather than just making everything really complex. It's all perfectly playable, but it's just like the effect of it is not very strong, right? So yes, it's just like little things like that. Yeah, so like, and it's also like how complex can you make a texture? How much can you add to it in terms of like contrary motion and syncopation and counter melody and bass motion and all those other kinds of things. Like how much can you inject into a texture before we start to lose track of that real impulsive motion, right? But I mean, all the same, like the whole sense of that adding up to the beautiful riot of color that you hear in Spanish music and experience, being at a festival or or some other kind of event, that absolutely comes through the music, right? So I think that's sort of like a war between those things. So, with that big intro, let's jump into the music, and I'm going to evaluate some of it according to the evaluation criteria that I've got here on my other computer, but other things are just going to be like certain practical concerns and so on. So, so starting off, we've got the whole concern about pitch weight in the upper middle register of the piano score. You do not get stuck there, and that is great. Like you have a big scope to your scoring, just monstrously huge, just really, really pulling open the like once again, like I said, the whole sense of like the whole festival and the just the like the huge the kind of the hugeness of the music is really coming through, and that's great. Okay. Now the sense that certain like the first four bars are being treated exactly the same as the second four bars, that's not really true, right? You have it's a lot of stuff of this is copy paste, right? It's like there's some things are just happening the same way twice, but in other places you are like moving things around, and it is enough of a change to where it doesn't sound identical, and I think that that's really really strong. Like especially the trumpets right in here taking part of the melody where they didn't before. Like adding the syncopated horns and so on and different bars. And I think that the whole, and also just like adding to the riot of color, I think that is really really strong, right? So it's not incredibly different, but it's just different enough, right? So if you were to kind of think about it in more detail, if there's if that was something that you felt that you could possibly work on, right? If that was some element that you felt was worth pursuing, then that would be one suggestion. But I'm not saying that you need to, right? It's just a possible concern that I had. Now, let's talk about the orchestration and just some of the little elements here. Now, as far as the use of pictograms for percussion, percussionists just don't need them. They don't want them. They don't like them. They somehow made their way into the language of percussion scoring because of books like the Kurt Stone music notation in the 20th century, and also Sibelius has pictograms, as we can see here, and so on. But the thing is that, like, it doesn't really seem like they talked to very many percussionists, because I have yet to find a percussionist who says, "Oh man, I really need the pictogram here. Could you put like a rectangle on its side with a slash through it, because that would really tell me that it's a snare drum," right? Instead of just telling us that it's a snare drum or a bass drum or whatever at the beginning, they just know. You know what I mean? It's sort of like using X note heads on your cymbal staff, which you don't do here, but I'm just saying that's another example of unnecessary kind of over notation, right? Adding too much. So, just looking at the orchestration of it, I think that, like, this part right in here is actually really, really strong. I really, just like this, yeah, and like the piccolo on top there and so on, and yeah, I think I wish that you could have done this here, right? It's like, because the kind of the change in the context of the dynamics here doesn't quite work for me. I think you should keep it the same way, right? But yeah, but I mean everything else. I mean, I just really love just the wonderful splashiness of it. It's really great. Pushing those violas way up there, the trill and the accent staccato and so on. And the cellos from below, that's really, really fun. So it's like, not that anything works or is badly supported or anything else, but yeah, I really, and then the clarinet's right in there, working with the second flute. About the only thing that I would say right in here is that some of the second flute scoring is a little low here. Like, you've already got first clarinet on that same pitch, right? And second violins. So the proper place for this second flute would be to be playing A2 with the first flute, right? Because like this right in here is just not going to come through. It's a waste of time for the flute player to play. Nobody will hear them, right? But like right in here, yum bum 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 bum. So you're bringing down the dynamic of certain players, and I'm going to talk about the dynamics of this in a minute. But yeah, here there's more of a chance if you follow certain things that I'm going to propose. But yeah, right in here, there's not really, not much point, right? And especially with trumpets, like anytime you're putting trumpets in the same register as low flutes, then there isn't much of a chance. Now here, like this E and this E right here with the second flute, that's all right, right? Because mezzo piano crescendo, and then the forte should go here. The mezzo piano crescendo to forte, and then at this point you're going to jump up and go A2 with this, I hope, with your flutes, right? So that gets out of the way. So and then jump back down here to mezzo piano again. Yeah, so just cleaning up the dynamics a bit. Doing what you did before, doing it the same way, is in the first two bars. Then I think that you have a chance of having this balance. All right, so so here we're starting to get into possibly like the complexity of the music working against the spirit of the dance, right? So, like right in here, like this, I would say the legato bass right in here. It's I mean, but people are just dancing, right? They're they just really people their feet need to move. You know what I mean? So I'm just not sure that this makes people's feet move. And if you look at like what's going on in the music, the in the piano score, right? We've got the leaping that sort of leaping left hand, you know what I mean? It has that just real that real hopping kind of a sound or kind of a feel to it. You could just see the dancers dancing and sweating and just jumping into it, right? And so like in some of the lower brass, we're seeing that, but I feel that there needs to be more emphasis on it, right, in order for it to really capture the spirit of the music. So yeah, and it's just very complex in terms of the yeah. So this is similar, like it's a bit of a takeoff on the accompaniment pattern, but it's in the first place it's slurred, in the second place it doesn't really cover very much ground, and it doesn't really jump. You know what I mean? It's more yeah, and you also have like emphasis of an accent in the middle of a slur, which you may want to rethink, right? And you may want to line up your accents in similar parts, right? And the slurring in the similar parts. Now, Atu oboes and Atu trumpets. The trumpets are going to win hands down, and you're barely going to hear the oboes. However, this leads to an entirely different conversation, right? I'm seeing two different visions of what's going on here. I'm seeing the melody back off. And I'm seeing the melody get strong, right? I'm not sure what I would say make a decision to be one or the other, right? So what's wrong with backing off here, letting the melody come out more, and having everybody go down to piano, right? Instead of doing this crescendo into here, seems unnecessary. Or you could go crescendo subito piano, right? But what if everything backed off quite a bit, especially the brass, right? And then at mezzo piano, say, or piano, the trumpets and the oboes will blend beautifully together. And then the melody can come out better, and you can balance the counter melody right in here. And maybe you can do something about the kind of leaping accompaniment in the left hand of the original piano score. Now, some of the same problems are inherent here. Now, here you don't have the big slur, but we have this somewhat inertia causing long notes in the bass, right? So just right at a time when we want the we want the kind of leaping sound once again. Now here you've interpreted some of the accompaniment style here, and certain things have backed way off, but the castanets are really, really loud. So I would just say bring the castanets down. Like they can be mezzo piano with everybody else. They're gonna be fine. But just really focus on the kind of leaping quality rather than the complexity. And I think the music will be truer to the spirit of the dance that's in it. And you can probably ease off on so many instruments on the melody, at least at first. Like here, you can pile it on, but it really is. There's so much focus on the melody here, and so much power in these low, this kind of these low pedal tones, these low, long lasting bass tones that, yeah, we were kind of, it's sort of pulling the energy down, even though the music isn't slowing down. It just sort of feels like we're backing off. Now, certain evaluation criteria I haven't really mentioned yet, so let's go back to them. The melodic development soaring quite high. Like in the context of the complexity of this, it's like that's just not the big concern, right? It's just balancing the different voices that you've got, right? But I will say one thing, and that is that if everybody falls down, like if everybody jumps down to compensate for not getting too high at the same time, you feel the drop, right? You know what I mean? Like if everybody jumps down, except for voices from below, then you don't get that continuity coming over the top, right? And one of the problems here is just that the piccolo is scored so high in this passage, right? If it were scored an octave lower, so that it was unison with the first flute, then it could continue on in the same line, and you wouldn't feel the drop here, right? And then you could have the first flute drop down to A2 with the second flute. I would say don't have the second flute scored so low, right? It will just get absorbed into the sound of everything else that's going on there, right? And then here we've got sort of the same problem. Bum bum bum. And this is this conflict here is a problem. So in the violins you're going dun 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 dun, dun. And here in the winds you're going dun 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 dun, dun. And the conflict that it sets up is, I mean, it's interesting, but I'm not sure how effective it is, right? It almost feels like you threw this in and then you rewrote this and then you forgot to come back and rewrite that, right? So I would say decide to do one or the other, and it'll just make it much more direct. But once again, the piccolo could be an octave lower, and then it could continue on in a nice straight line all the way up in a scale. Because another problem here is it's not just so much that we're not getting the continuity of the line as we see it in the piano part, but it's also that these pitches here, you can mark them piano, diminuendo, or whatever, right? But they'll just hammer at the ear, and then it'll take away the sense of rising upwards, right? It'll take away that sense of continuity, of upward continuity. So those are two big concerns. And here I think you're compensating for going possibly too high, right? By throwing in, but it's just a lot to hassle with. It would be better to have the strings just run up to that high E fingered than to do this. Just in general, notice how the line is falling in every instrument, right? Except for right here where, because of the... this is another problem too, running up to this E and then suddenly jumping down to position the fingers in an artificial harmonic and then slurring across, right? So it's just, technically, this is just a big hassle. It's possible, but it's just a big hassle. Be better, it's so much easier for the player just to finger all the way up to high E. All right, but the main issue here is that all of the instruments are falling at the same time. So you just feel that it almost feels like you're kind of pulling the rug out from under the melody, right? So have some instruments continue on upwards along the same channel, and others can jump down to compensate. There's nothing wrong with the oboes going up to this high E. They can play that all day. That high E is no big deal. Now, the next thing is part of a concern about melodic phrasing, and it also deals with the motion, like the rhythms of the dance, right? So Falla is setting up this big upward running scale, and he ends it on the first beat, right? So the rhythmic and melodic phrasing really starts on the second beat, right? So yup up 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 bum. That's the end of the phrase, and then second beat, 2 3 1, 2 and 3 and 1, 2 and 3 and 1, right? So that's the yup up 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 bum up 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 bum up 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 bum, right? That's so when we run up to the E, and the E is the first note of it's like it's the same note, and it just continues on, right? We lose that sense of the of phrasing, right? So yup up 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 bum 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 bum, and it just feels really relentless, which is something that I was trying to avoid in my evaluation criteria, right? The upper middle register feeling relentless if there's no textural contrast to the previous passage, right? And there isn't a lot. Like, you're doing a lot of the same things that you did before. So here I would challenge you to to embrace that phrasing, the 2 3 1, 2 3 1, right? And just like what does that, what in your knowledge of Spanish dance and rhythms and things like that, what reflects through your orchestration, your interpretation of this passage, right? And and also, like, try to avoid some of the previous gestures to keep the music fresh, right? So if that's the sort of the same thing that you did before, and the same syncopations and so on, maybe avoid those and then come up with some new, some new dance moves, to put it really bluntly. Maybe ease up on the timpani, right? Or maybe just judiciously use the timpani, right? Just like at the beginning of each rhythmic phrase. Right? Now, continuing on, this is actually pretty cool. It's just like, do you want the music to be paced, right? So it's, right here, it's almost like a spinning, it's almost a spinning dance move. Yeah, da 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 da. Right. So if we're pacing off each beat, yeah, da 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 da. Right. Are we taking away some of the freedom from the motion of the dance by adding harmony behind it? Are we adding some inertia in there? Right. Now, I'm not saying that we are. I'm just saying those are questions to ask yourself. And you may think, well, I don't agree with Thomas, but I just thought of something else, so why don't I put that in? All right. One last comment overall before I turn the page, and that is, so far you have more or less scored your horns in 4-part harmony in like sort of a 1-3-2-4 kind of scoring. But in generally in horn scoring, the second part, the lower middle part, will be joined to the upper part in the upper staff, and then the upper middle part will be joined with the bottom part in the lower staff, right? So this would be the first, second, which you should bring up to here, and then this third part you should drop down to there, right? So there's an interlocking kind of a sense to harmonic positions in chords like this. And then another kind of general comment is that you were fastidious for the most part in indicating A2 or like first player or which player, and that's great. Just watch out for some spots like this, like is this meant to be first horn or third horn, or which one is it meant to be? And then, and once again here, when you're going to a single line. Look, this is something I also mess up on too from time to time. And the way that this is scored right in here, like, let's say that this was intended to be A2, right? And let's say this was intended to be A2 here as well. Then it would be perfect for this to be a third horn part, right? So written down here. So you'd have the first up here, you'd have the third playing exactly the same thing down here. And then this would be scored as intervals, right? You'd have the D and the G together, and the E and the A together, and that would be first and second horn. And then you'd have the same exact thing on the staff below, which would be third and fourth horn, playing those same parts, right? So don't be afraid to score that way. Like the same exact thing in both parts if you intend A2 on the upper part and A2 on the lower part and so on in intervals. So just copy, the top staff of intervals down to the bottom staff. Then we've got this continuing on here. So about the only critique I would make here is I feel that Falla put in he put in the little harmonized part for a reason, right? Right at the when he gets to the end of this phrase, he has the left hand go C A B B E, leading to the A here, right? So I just feel, as everything just becomes about the upper, the right hand melody, I feel that we just really are missing that sense of harmonization, right? And I think it's so essential to the music, and and the further along you get, the more essential it is, right? So there are so many players on the same notes without that harmony that after a while it just becomes really kind of a little jarring, right? And then we don't have the lower part leading to the A, right? Just bum bum bum, right? The B A, and I really love the B E A. It's like it's like quintal motion, right? You're going down a fifth and then down another fifth, and then you end up on your new tonic of A in A Phrygian, right? So, but there's a lot of cool stuff here, and I think you might have run out of time. And I know you're a busy guy, I mean, and a lot of what you're doing, people might not realize this, but Eddy has been doing his part, during this crisis, and his work is pretty serious. And not to get into it too much, and I don't know that much about it, but I do know that Eddy works in medicine, and that a lot of the stuff that he's doing is pretty critical to the survival of us all. And so any work that he's able to do, any presence that he's able to give to the community, I appreciate, and I honor, right? So I'm not going to get after you, Eddy, for running out of time or energy or whatever. But just to observe, I know you've got the passion to continue and everything else, but I know your time is limited. So I can see as some of this scoring starts to get a little more and more sparse, right? So it's not fair for me to just look at this second section and say, Eddy, what happened? Where's the beef here, right? I don't think that is appropriate. But I mean, you can sort of see right in here, you just have some great ideas, and and I really like that, dun 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 bum 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 bum. One thing I would observe here, if you're gonna go yum bum bum da 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 da, which is really is elevating the that melody up an octave, right? So if you're gonna do that, then I think that it's not enough to have this kind of thing going on in the strings. You also need it in your winds, right? So clarinet, one of the clarinets could be doubling this, right? Or you could just you could switch these positions. This could be a clarinet thing, and then this could be an oboe staff, and then this entire thing, starting from the lowest note of the violas going all the way through, could be doubled by clarinet going all the way through, right? That way you just keep the consistency, right? Because the trading off of the parts between the hands in the piano score is completely incidental, right? It has nothing to do with going from the lower part to the upper part. It just has to do trading off that very long motive across the hands, right? Just because of where they're positioned. So you don't have to be tied down by that. You could have the violist play the entire thing because they can get all the way up to that G with no problem, right? So you don't have to follow what the spacing of the hands, right? And it's like same thing here. You don't have to do that trade off between the hands. right? And then here, like the same thing. I think that this needed to be fleshed out with more scoring, right? We just kind of just sort of ran out of time in there. And then right in here, I would say, like, same comments on the previous page. To keep up the dancey feeling, right? What you really need is that bass line, the right? The where which I've marked in the evaluation criteria, widely reaching left hand patterns, right? That's the kind of shifting, leaping kind of motion, kind of dance motion. And then like just adding the tuba and the double basses from below just really kind of slows that down. But I think this is kind of cool, like bassoon and violas and cellos doubling and so on. Dun-dum, dun-dum, right? And then here you got the melody. Dun, dun. Now, here I would say just really make these separate notes because that is a melody, right? It's not a held E, right? It's dun or B E E dun dun E E dun dun dun, right? It isn't E dun dun dun, right? It's like it's just really the E hitting on the downbeat is part of the whole triplet dropping down, right? At least how it's scored in the piano part, and I feel that's something we should import into our arrangements. So, the general criteria that I have here, like I'll really go easy on you. The contrast of color, breadth of texture. I think that's something that would have evolved if you'd had a chance to work on this part of the score more. Maintaining differentiated roles and closely spaced melodies, overlapping accompaniment figures, and so on. You're starting to take that into consideration. Keeping the triplets from overwhelming the melodic line, that's more in the treatment of the melodic line. I think that you would eventually come around to working on this. Widely reaching left-hand patterns, that needs some work, right? And then keeping the textural contours fresh and not too much the same as you go towards the end. Hopefully that would come out of your chance to work on this a little bit more and to like maybe make decisions to change around the melody instrument or change between melody instruments, to maybe add a little bit of freshness of color and so on. Like maybe the triplets could change between instruments or change their dynamic level or something, right? But I think the main thing to think about here is like keeping the sense of dance really, really fresh and bum, 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 bum. Just that and especially that low sforzando note right at the end of each bar. On the very, very low E in the piano score, the left hand, right? That's something where you've got all this power and even if it's very subtle, like very subtle touches in tuba, bass trombone, timpani, double basses, they could all be hitting that last note, or some of them could be trading off, right? So yeah, I mean, just so much potential in this. I mean, I just wish you had more time to work on your orchestration, Eddy, because obviously you've got a gift for it, and you've got so many terrific ideas and just a real pronounced sense of color. And I like how fearless that you are in how you assign functions to different instruments, and just the wildness of there's an authenticity to your scoring which is so compelling. I mean, I feel that like this is a great opportunity, right? And I don't want you to worry about the missed part of the opportunity because of circumstances and the amount of energy and time that you're able to put into something like this. Please don't blame yourself. Do not be hard on yourself. I just think this is a standout effort. This is really giving us a view into where you could be with more time and energy, and I really respect that, and I really do. There are parts of this I really am in awe of. So please don't give it up. Don't don't ever feel like it's too much, or like we or me as the guy who's responsible for the orchestration online community will be disappointed in you or anything like that. So yeah, I actually, like the next this work obviously had some characteristic resonance with what you have got, what you're experiencing, kind of from a cultural perspective, and it makes me really curious to think about like how you would take on our next entry, which has like nothing to do with that, but still has like it just has a completely different quality to it. But it's one that I think that might resonate with you all the same and in just as deep a way, right? So please hold that open, possibly participating in the next one. Hopefully things won't be so crazy in the middle of next year. And I really, it would be interesting to see pretty much everybody take that on again. Although I don't know how many years in a row I can do, over 150 entries. I might have to change something fundamental about the way that we do these orchestration challenges. But for now I'm enjoying it. For now I've got the energy to do it, and I'm really looking forward to what's happening next. So speaking of which, I'm going to go on to the next entry and see if I can get that done before breakfast. But I'm just going to, thank you once again, Eddie, for you're taking the time to do this, for being, for supporting on Patreon. It's just amazing, and for, for your presence in the community. It's all really much appreciated, and thanks to all the Patreon members out there who are supporting and people who are watching this. There are a lot of people making supportive comments who aren't not in the challenge at all, or just didn't get a chance to this year, or didn't feel like it was the right entry for them or the right time for them, and they're still participating anyways, and that is, I really appreciate that a lot. So please keep the comments coming. Give Eddie some advice. Eddie, if you have time, give some other people some advice, especially in this group of dotted semi-brev entries, and I will keep things going here on this end and really try to keep a lot of entries coming over the next month. Thanks all. See you really soon.